All right, let's talk some power rankings. If this is your first time watching one of these, I highly recommend not skipping to your team and watching the beginning portion, just so that way you understand how this works. This is not a typical power rankings show, although before I get into that, I gotta talk about the Henry Ruggs situation that just happened. It was weird because I thought about making a video about just that, but that would have felt kind of like I'm capitalizing off of somebody's, death, which I didn't want to do. If you didn't hear, Henry Ruggs has been charged with a DUI resulting in a fatality. So that's a horrible situation, and obviously all of our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and the friends of the deceased. It's just a crappy situation. So yeah, absolutely sucks. Don't drink and drive, kids. It's not worth it. Just get an Uber, especially if you're a millionaire. Should go without saying. So yeah, again, would have felt weird if I didn't at least touch on it. I would have felt weird about just making videos like normal, pretending it didn't happen when clearly it did. And if you want more information, I recommend, follow Ian Rappaport on Twitter. He's retweeted some stuff that you can find more information about it. Anyways, no easy transitions, so I'm just going to do a hard cut, and then you're going to see me acting like, normal again, talking about the fun power ranking stuff. All right, so power rankings time. If you've never watched this is how this stuff works. So in this past offseason, I did a study basically seeing how many points added or points less given up does each position group get for you. And basically, I figured out a win total for how each position works using analytics. I then thought it would be fun, and it has been fun, to week by week just go through and see how it's racking up, how that's working for every single team. However, how do I figure out exactly where each team ranks in each positional grouping? I've been using Pro Football Focus just because it's a thing to use. I know some people love Pro Football Focus, some people hate Pro Football Focus. I think they're fine. I like them personally. I think they're pretty good. I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything anybody says, so that makes sense. So if you have complaints about which tier a certain group is in, take it up with PFF. Don't take it up with me. Although if you have a critique over like why is this category more important than that category, that is me. That is something you can complain about with me. The one exception is kicking. I just use kicking percentage. Again, not the best way to do it, but it's an easy way to do it for this kind of video, so it works out. So yeah, okay, without further ado, long intro, but let's just finally get into the power rankings of it all. All right, so here we go with the bottom 4 teams. You're going to notice a couple of different shifts if you've been watching week after week. So one of them is I'm going from bottom to top now. Seemingly that's what the comments wanted. So hey, I'm a man of the people. I'll do what you guys want. Also, a little thing on the bottom. This is just where each a position group ranks in terms of each tier, so you can kind of follow along. For example, you look at the Colts offensive line and see that it's 0.86 wins added. Well, now what you can do is you can go over and look at, the O-line rankings on the bottom and see, okay, that means tier 4. So figure that might be helpful for some of you. Anyways, let's get into it, starting with those bottom 4 teams. I mean, the Texans are bad. Yeah, we all know this. Not really that surprising. They've actually still had okay quarterback play. I still wonder how much of that is from Tyrod Taylor, but their passing has actually been a decent aspect of their game so far. You see a couple other things sprinkled throughout. Pass rush, although they just traded away a pass rusher, so maybe that'll go down. Same thing with run defense. Wide receivers, at least tier 4. Not a lot of talent there. Same thing with the Jets. I mean, the Jets are an offensive line team. That's pretty much all they have going for them. It's really funny how their wide receiving core, despite the fact that they put up 400 passing yards last week, is still ranked 32nd according to PFF. And I kind of think that's fair. I kind of think that's fair. Kind of shows what kind of season it's been so far for New York. But listen, you got a couple wins, so you got that going for you. Still not a very talented team. I'm not a Mike White believer. I know some of you are. This is where they end up here, according to the algorithm. Number 30, you have the Detroit Lions. Hey, Lions, despite being the worst record in football, you at least are ahead of a couple teams. Offensive line's been solid. Jared Goff has been tier 4. And then, again, a little bit of stuff sprinkled throughout, not much, which gives them 3.55 total wins. Finally, number 29, the Colts, who, again, this is kind of one of those teams I've had to say there's an asterisk next to them because this algorithm does not account for injuries. All it cares about is, how well you performed. So for the Colts, like their offensive line's tier 4, but when healthy, it might be like a tier 1 offensive line. That's a whole other win added. You know, Carson Wentz has kind of had an up and down season, but when he's playing his best, he can be tier 3 or tier 2. But still, you look down the list, the wide receiving core being tier 5, that does kind of check out to me. The wide receiving core hasn't been great, and then, not a lot on defense. So Colts aren't a horrible team. I'm still willing to say that there's a chance they could be good, especially because they can kind of scheme around that, good run defense and basically, try to help out their coverage. But how well is that going to do? I don't know. So that's where the Colts are. All right, next 4, we have number 28, the Balls. That is the Washington football team. Also, I'm now just realizing I probably, since I'm going from bottom to top, should, change the way I structured this. Again, the structure taking me a minute. Listen, you can tell I'm not, working behind NFL Network or anything. This is very much just me figuring this stuff out using Microsoft Word and MS Paint to do this stuff. But anyways, yeah, for Washington, they're kind of a great definition of, hey, you need more than just offensive and defensive line play. Offensive and defensive line play literally could not be better. I mean, I guess it could be. Run defense is tier 4, but other than that, run defense is tier 2, pass rush is tier 1, offensive line is tier 1. So they're right there. They're almost at that perfect amount of offensive and defensive line play, but obviously you need more than that. You need quarterback play, you need wide receivers, you don't need a running game, but that certainly helps, and you need coverage, and they don't have any of that stuff, so that's why they're a bottom 5 team according to the algorithm, which I think checks out. Number 27, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who consistently overperform the algorithm, which, I think in this algorithm, most teams check out. The Steelers have kind of been the one exception. So is the algorithm at fault, or is it just like Mike Tomlin is really good at some of this stuff? I think I'm more inclined to believe it's Mike Tomlin being really good, because this doesn't account for coaching, which checks out. And you have the run defense and pass rush on their defense, and even though the coverage has been bad, according to PFF, they can kind of game plan around that, right? So that's kind of where you have some benefits, perhaps, but also why you can see them have some rough weeks as well and be a bit inconsistent. Offense, there's still not a ton I like about this offense. I don't think the Steelers are good. I'm willing to believe the algorithm, but with Mike Tomlin, they can win any game. That's how I view the Steelers, but plenty of you will disagree, and fair enough. Number 26, you have the Chicago Bears here. The Bears, the biggest thing about them is that running back room, right? With Khalil Herbert being a tier 1 running back right now, he's changing the game for the Chicago Bears. And as long as he can continue to do that, they have a legitimate, chance to win some of these games. Still not great. I still think, Fields has been very up and down his rookie season, to say the least. Receiving core has been very up and down, and more down than up, I think is also fair to say. And defense hasn't been great. Bears aren't good, but at least you've got a couple pieces you can hopefully build around. Number 25, Jaguars, another team where they're kind of, their running game is certainly a big factor in their, few wins that they've had, few good games that they've had. Their one win, that's kind of what's happened. I know Robinson did get hurt, but he is reportedly day-to-day, so even if he misses a week, he's not going to be gone for the whole year, which is nice. So, you have some talent there, and again, some stuff sprinkled about. As a whole, though, as we all know, Jaguars, not the best team. All right, next 4 here. The Miami Dolphins are looking a little bit better, right? You have a team that, for the quarterback play, Tua has been tier 3. That's a nice surprise, I think. You have the receiving core, which has been tier 4, but that's actually been an upgrade from previous weeks. And the run defense, run defense is something that's fluctuated a lot right here, but that's going up to tier 2. Coverage has still been a bit disappointing. Part of that has been injuries, though, and then, no points for kickers. So 5.4, still not a great team, but at least you're starting to climb a little. Number 23, the Giants. The Giants have just, not been great. They started off well due to the algorithm, but part of that was, PFF giving Daniel Jones a tier 1 quarterback grade, which obviously we knew wasn't going to last. It has not. Still been tier 3, not horrible, but, bad offensive line. Receiving core has been banged up. That's what's caused that to be lower. And then, defense has been okay, but it hasn't been as good as we've seen in seasons past. So that's why it's there. Number 22, we have the Carolina Panthers. Interestingly enough, Panthers just beat the Falcons, but are currently one spot below them. Obviously, the transitive property doesn't always work. And really, I mean, the question mark with the Panthers is just going to be that quarterback and receiving room, which at times has looked like, maybe like a tier 2 or tier 1 at both of those categories. At other times, it's looked a lot worse, and it's been more of the worst than the best. And part of it, you have to think, okay, if Christian McCaffrey is back, you're adding 2 wins there with their running game being 2.5 wins, and that also helps the receiving core and quarterback. So while they're currently sitting here at 22, you think about 7.13 wins, Christian McCaffrey adds at least 2. You could argue Christian McCaffrey might add like 3 wins to this team. If he does, this now means that it's a playoff team. So I really do think that he makes that much of a difference. As for 21, the Falcons, a little bit ahead. Part of it is Ryan's been very inconsistent. Matt Ryan currently getting credit for a tier 2 quarterback grade. He was really good for like a good few week stretch, but then had a bad day against Carolina. So he needs to be more consistent, but even if he is, there's just not a lot of talent on this team. Receiving cores looked better, but then there's, Calvin Ridley is taking some time off, so that's going to hurt the Falcons. So just kind of a tough situation for them. All right, next 4. So we have the next 4 teams, and this is interesting. So these are all the last teams that are below the, the 50, basically below in the bottom half. But also you look at the win-loss total, and 3 of them are set to have an above 500 record, which is kind of, fascinating to me, because there's kind of a lot of teams that have bottomed out, meaning we might have teams that are kind of, very good, let's say. So number 20, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who, they've been disappointing, and they've been floating right around here in the algorithm all season, in between the 7 and 9 win range, and kind of that, mediocre territory. And there is, to me, this Kansas City Chiefs team reminds me a lot of like the Seattle Seahawks when they have Russell Wilson. I think Mahomes is still good. Mahomes hasn't had his best season. I have not given up on Mahomes. So, tier 3 right now, that's probably fair for how he's played, but obviously we know the talent is better. I think it's being too giving into recency bias to act like he's no longer an elite quarterback, in my opinion. But the receiving core has been disappointing, and also, it's so dependent on Hill and Kelsey. When teams take those 2 guys out of the game, there's just nothing left. On top of this, you got to run the ball better. Teams play cover 2 all day. They need to run the ball better, and their defense isn't spectacular. It's not the worst defense in the world. They did just add Melvin Ingram. That helps, but still, not a great defense. It's not a great team right now, but we'll see if Mahomes can sort of work some magic in the second half. Number 19, you have San Francisco. Jimmy G back to tier 4 quarterback range, and he played better than that last week, so you're hoping you can get like tier 3 or tier 2 by the end of the season. That's the hope, at least. Good offensive line, again, mediocre receiving core so far, which I thought would be pretty good. And then their defense, their coverage has been grading well. So bounce back week for San Francisco. They're currently 19th, which doesn't seem good in the rankings, but again, 8.88 wins. They're right in the mix of a potential playoff spot, so that's good for them. Number 18, the Eagles, another team that's kind of like, oh, that's surprising that you're this high. Hurts has been very up and down as well. I do worry how much of it is when teams are playing the right scheme. Hurts can have trouble when teams are just sort of playing coverage and not letting Hurts get outside the pocket. That's where he starts to struggle a little bit. Is that his fault? Is that the receiver's fault? I don't know. But, those are both tier 3. Good offensive line for them. Defense is doing solid as well. So, there's stuff to like about this team. Number 17, the Packers. The Packers are not going to be very happy with this. Packers fans are not. Again, take it up with PFF. I'm not the one saying Aaron Rodgers is a tier 3 quarterback. That's them. Although, I don't think Aaron Rodgers has been a tier 1 quarterback, at least not through this season. He's been fine. He hasn't had to do that much, though. So it's kind of hard to really give him that much extra value for this season. And, obviously part of that has been injuries, especially against the Cardinals. It was entirely injuries. But, running game did very well in that one. Maybe the running game could find its way up to tier 1. It has been there in the past, and that can kind of make a difference. And then, defense being mediocre, that checks out. And again, part of that is with injuries. So, they're an interesting team. I think I want to see a little bit more, but they are a team I probably expect to overperform their current value of 9.3 wins. But again, keep in mind, it's not predicting that they're going to win 9.3 games. It's saying if they continue to play the way they played all season, they deserve to end up with 9.3 wins. Next tier right here. So again, we got some interesting stuff, right? With the Seattle Seahawks here at 16. I already know I'm going to get some comments. How in the world could you have the Packers below the Seahawks and the Broncos? Relax. That's not how this works. It's simply, again, it's not a predictive model. It's simply talking about what's happened so far. And the Seattle Seahawks here are mostly here due to tier 2 quarterback play. Geno Smith came in and actually played pretty well, against the Jaguars. Most of that was because it was the Jaguars. But, the Seahawks are kind of right around where we expected them to be. If Russell Wilson was playing like a tier 1 quarterback and he was still healthy, this is a playoff team. And Russell Wilson played most of the season, but now Geno Smith is there. That's kind of why I think most of us have a much lower opinion of Seattle, even though the algorithm doesn't factor in, new quarterback, have to change that out, which is fine. Not an issue. That's just, that's how it worked. Also, I put Seattle ahead of Green Bay. That's just because I randomly put them there. They're both actually tied at 16th. So it's not 16 and 17. It's actually a tie for 16th. They both have 9.3 wins. Number 15, we have the Denver Broncos, who, again, they're kind of one of these weird teams where, this is kind of one of those issues where the, Bridgewater and the entire offense kind of overperformed a little bit, especially Bridgewater, and now it's kind of fallen back, but you still get credit for those first few weeks. And they had at least a bounce back win. The receiving core is tier 1, so you got that going for you. The biggest disappointment has been their defense. Not a ton of points there when we thought they could be maybe the best defense in football. So that's been the disappointment, but at least you're getting some value on offense. Number 14, we have the Chargers right here. So Chargers here at 14, and then the Saints are just 0.01 wins ahead of them. So neither one of these teams too far apart from each other. Chargers, good offensive line. Obviously, we know Herbert's good. And decent wide receiver play as well. And even their defense, it's covered well. It doesn't stop the run well, but that's also partially by design. In fact, it's exactly by design. So that's kind of a thing. The reality is, the Patriots match up really well against the Chargers. The Chargers had New England in that game. If there isn't that miscommunication on the, pick 6, the Chargers probably win that game. I don't know, but that was certainly, kind of a back-breaking pick 6 just due to, a fluky play. So I think Chargers are still good, but it's interesting to see how well they will be. Number 13, we have the Saints. How about the Saints? 9.99 wins, and you could argue, but they're about to get a lot worse because Jameis Winston got hurt. They're only getting credit for 1 win at the quarterback position. If Taysom Hill comes in, or even Trevor Siemian, I don't think it's out of the question that they could get tier 4 quarterback play. I don't think that's crazy, and that that'll give you an extra win and kind of keep pace. Alvin Kamara is still the best part of this team with his 2.5 wins added with his rushing ability. You also have really good coverage for them, so that's another key aspect of football that they do well. And the receiving core hasn't been as bad as people would have expected. Offensive line's played solid as well. Both of those are tier 3. So, a lot of stuff to like about the Saints team, and one of the best things they do is just there's no real weakness. It's hard to really attack a weakness because they don't really have any, especially on their defense. So that's kind of what they have going for them. All right, next tier, we have the Ravens right here at number 12. So Baltimore Ravens, who, tier 3 quarterback play does not feel right for me. But again, I've always kind of disagreed with how PFF evaluates Lamar. We've kind of talked about this every week, I feel like, where either the Ravens have a tier 1 running game or the Ravens have a tier 1 quarterback. It shouldn't be possible that they have neither, in my opinion. But again, that's fine. We can disagree. The algorithm is mostly just something to look at while I then talk about the rest of the team. Receiving cores played well. Offensive lines played well. Ravens currently, would be in a playoff spot via this system. Number 11, Cincinnati, who, listen, they lost to the Jets. That wasn't great. Cincinnati still looks solid, still good quarterback play and still good receiving play. That's going to get you places in the NFL. I still stand by. I think their coaching is holding them back a little bit. I believe that. I think that was the case in that Jets game. I thought that, really, I don't know what they were thinking in terms of the way they approached the Jets offense there. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, quite frankly, but still a lot of talent around this team. It's a playoff caliber team, I think. The question is just, will they get there with the coaching? And probably, but we'll see. Number 10, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who are currently, 10th, a top 10 team according to the system, with the quarterback play being tier 1 still with Cousins. He didn't have his best game though on prime time. That's fair, but he's still I don't know if he's tier 1. He's probably tier 2. So you have that. The coverage is still getting credit for tier 1. That might be a bit high as well. So I don't know if this team is actually a 10.4 win team right now. I kept saying, I think this is a playoff caliber team, but the coaching just can't seem to get them there. And I still kind of feel that way, although is it a playoff caliber team? I would still say probably, but the coaching is struggling. The receiving core I think is too low. I think the receiving core will eventually play better towards the end of the season. The question is just the coaching as well. Vikings and Bengals I feel pretty similar about. Number 9, we have the Cowboys, who did drop, but part of this is because their quarterback play is now tier 2 due to Cooper Rush playing instead of Dak Prescott. So again, doesn't take into account injuries, because it's sort of more, the way to view this is to see, okay, which teams have gotten lucky so far, which teams haven't gotten lucky so far, or have gotten unlucky so far. That's kind of the better way to view it than just sort of predicting for the future, although that alone can help you predict for the future. So that's kind of the way to view it. Still great offensive line, still great receiving core, and the defense has still played much better than expected. Once Prescott comes back, they'll be even better. Cowboys are a good team. All right, so next, for all of these teams and the Cowboys, we're all, within half a win of each other. So a lot of, sometimes these things do get bunched up a little bit, which is why it's less about paying attention to which one of these teams really should be higher, because they're all very close. The Browns are still number 8. The algorithm still loves them. But the issue, of course, is they've been weird this season. I don't really know how to describe it so much. I mean, a lot of the stuff has been good. I feel like I still kind of do believe in Cleveland. I think they're a talented team. They have a talented roster, and I like their coaching staff. The Mayfield injury is certainly a frustrating situation. I also expected the receiving core to be better, but I don't know. What about this team do you look at and say, okay, well, that's not right? Offensive line being tier 2, no, that if anything, it should be higher. Quarterback play, maybe you could argue is too high. That's the one thing I'll give you. But receiving core seems fine. Running game might seem low. Run defense, coverage, pass rush. This is a talented roster that's doing a lot of stuff well, except for winning football games. So hard to put my finger on them, but I do expect them to be better. I do. Number 7, we have the Titans, and interestingly, they do not have a tier 1 running game, and part of me has been speculating maybe that's just because, teams are trying to stop Derrick Henry so much, even though I believe PFF does take that into consideration. That could still be playing a factor. Tier 1 quarterback Ryan Tannehill, that's fun. Probably won't last, but he's tier 2. Wide receiving game has slowly improved throughout the season as it's gotten healthier. And how about a tier 1 coverage unit grade for the Titans? I mean, there you go. This defense was so bad last year, been vastly improved, whether or not you believe it's tier 1 in coverage. So there you go. Number 6, the New England Patriots. A lot of people have been saying, hey, Patriots are back. You know who hasn't been saying that? This algorithm. They've been high on the Patriots all season long. Part of me does wonder a little bit, looking at it. Okay, offensive line, tier 3, that checks out. Quarterback play and wide receiver play both being tier 2, that might be a bit high. You might be losing some there, but even if you drop them both, you're talking about, a 1.5 to 2 wins going down. So that's still a playoff team, because their running game, I do believe, is tier 1. And you could maybe even argue their defense could potentially be better just because you have Bill Belichick at the helm, right? So even if you don't have the most talent, he can make the most of that talent. So at least on a defensive side. So Patriots, I do think are a playoff team. I think that they're that talented. Are they, the 6th best team in football? I don't know about that, but I think they're good. Number 5, you have the Los Angeles Rams here, who, tier 1 offensive line, tier 1 wide receiving room, tier 3 quarterback play. And again, people have been going crazy over Stafford. He's in the MVP consideration, and I get it because of how well stuff has worked. He is by far and away leading the league in EPA per play. So I think there's some real logic behind giving it to Stafford. But again, it kind of comes down to the difference between value versus performance, if that makes sense. The way I always view it is, if you think about baseball, in baseball, there's a stat called RBIs, or runs batted in, which is, when you get a hit, let's say you hit a 2-run home run, you get 2 RBIs. You hit a 3-run triple, you get 3 RBIs. That's how the RBI stat works. People used to use that stat, and then people completely went away from the stat because they kind of felt like, okay, well, this is, so luck dependent. You don't control, all of that stuff. All you can do is so much. Some player might just have way more opportunities to do that. And that is very true. So using RBIs does not dictate performance, but it can dictate value. If a guy has 6 RBIs in a game, you say, okay, he had a great game. He added so much value to that game. He was such a difference maker in that specific game. I think you could view Stafford in kind of a similar light. Yes, it is fair to say that Stafford hasn't been the best quarterback in football in terms of performance, I think. However, given the situation, I think you could make an argument that he's been the most valuable quarterback. So that's kind of where it gets interesting, and it's kind of a fun debate to have. Now, top 4. How about the Buffalo Bills cracking the top 4? They were a team that, this algorithm hated earlier on in the season. I think they've been in the bottom 4 and now into top 4, so good for them. Offensive line still hasn't, graded well with PFF, but it's gotten better. Tier 4 now. It had been tier 5 for a while. Quarterback play is tier 3. Again, Allen has had his ups and downs, but he's obviously better. We know he's better than tier 3. Has he performed better than tier 3? I would also probably say yes, but, fine, whatever. He's still been good. Wide receiving room, tier 3. Running game, shockingly, is going to be getting credit for tier 1 right here. And again, an element of that is just Josh Allen himself running with the football. That helps. I think it's totally fair to say, okay, well, their running game isn't actually tier 1. Like, that's kind of, like, they shouldn't get credit for that. But then the flip side is, well, their quarterback room isn't actually tier 3. So it kind of all evens out, in my opinion. Coverage, tier 1, that's going to help. In fact, you look at these, top 4 teams, 3 of them have tier 1 coverages. The other one is tier 2. You also have, some other stuff across the board. Good run defense, not the best pass rush, but that's fine. Tier 1 kicking, this gets them over 12 wins. Number 3, you have Tampa Bay, who, Tampa Bay has coming off of a tough loss, but their grades are relatively similar, which I do think is fair. Brady is still a tier 1 quarterback. Offensive line did drop to tier 2, but it's still a really good offensive line. Wide receiving room is tier 2. I feel like that should be tier 1. Still kind of surprised by that. So I don't know. But then you have, a little bit of value with the running game, good value with the run defense at tier 3. So solid, not spectacular, but solid. And then their coverage has, been surprisingly solid for what they currently have. Again, a big factor is injuries, right? I think we all agree Tampa Bay's run defense is, when healthy, one of, if not the best in football, but there's been injuries. Lavonte David missing some time, that hurts. So that kind of stuff does hurt. Also, kicking being tier 5, pass rush being tier 5. You'd like to see those things start to improve, but, as a whole, still a very good Buccaneers football team right here, and a big part of it is their quarterback. Number 2, the Arizona Cardinals dropped a spot after their loss, but they're still a good football team right now, below the Raiders, who we'll get to in a second. Offensive line's good, tier 1 quarterback play, tier 1 receiving play. Honestly, if you ask me who's the MVP, I think I'd give it to Kyler right now. That's where I would lean. I actually kind of liked what I saw him do against the Packers, where, he took what the defense gave him. It's something we've been waiting for Mahomes to do for his entire career. Kyler's already figured that out, so that's cool. I got some questions about the running game for Arizona, about why is it, keep getting 0 wins added? What's the deal with the running game? Why isn't it getting better? Because statistically, they do have a very good yards per carry. My theory on this, and first, it is worth mentioning, they're actually just, they're the highest tier 4. So that gives you 0, but you're 1 spot away from tier 3, which gives you, more. So that's a necessary component to talk about here. But I also think a big element is teams like to play cover 2 and like to double DeAndre Hopkins a lot and stuff like that. So that kind of forces, it actually makes things more difficult on Kyler Murray, which just makes what he's doing even more impressive schematically. But that also allows for some good runs, despite the fact that, maybe they're not running the ball super effectively, and the run blocking has been well, because again, run doesn't mean how well you run altogether. It's simply just the running backs themselves and how they rush. That's all that means. Run defense was the reason they lost that game against Green Bay. I mean, they were all out blitzing to stop the run and couldn't do it, so that's discouraging. But their coverage has been good. So the nice thing is you kind of force teams to run the football by having a bad run defense, which allows you to stay in games, even if you're playing a good offense. But the downside is you kind of want more possessions, not less possessions, when you have a high-flying offense that throws the ball a lot. Typically, more possessions benefits the better team, and the Cardinals are better than, according to this algorithm, better than 30 teams, but not than 31. We still have the Raiders sitting up top at number 1. Who would have thought? Again, an element of this is it's going to be small sample size, and it's even more hilarious that they're doing this with the worst offensive line in football, according to PFF, and according to just like people with eyes. Like, I think that's fair. But tier 1 quarterback play. Carr is also a legit MVP candidate. He's been ridiculously good. Wide receiving play has been good, although obviously the Henry Ruggs situation that just broke, that makes things more difficult. So, that sucks in a lot of different ways. Football is the last of them, but it does also suck in the football side of things. So, we'll see how that goes. And finally, what they also do well is, tier 1 coverage, tier 1 pass rush. That's getting you some wins right there. Tier 3 kicking, if that's what you're into. So, a lot of good stuff about the Raiders. Are they really going to win 13.36 games? Probably not, because that's not possible. But are they really going to win 13 games? I still don't know. But are they a good team? Are they a playoff team? I think so. I think the Raiders are good. It's good. It's kind of funny that they consistently are number 1, but hey, they played well. So they deserve to be in a playoff spot. They deserve to be top 10 for sure. There is some volatility in the stuff, but that's what makes it fun. At least that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know what your thoughts are on this video. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.